Well, would you look what we have here, the Queen to the King. Mirage is actually incredibly strong and, as stated to be the Queen, shares the Weapon Slinger tag with Chroma. He does it about as well as she does, so saying Queen, King is more of a just play on the fact that one's female, one's male. The differences between the two are numerous, but as far as weapon slingers go, Mirage is a monster in the category. She lacks her King's support capabilities, but makes up for it with more damage and more CC. However, let me tell you a fun story. Years ago, I made a statement that Mirage is the most boring frame in the game, as I enjoy frames that are permanently active, always popping off with their abilities, and in a permanent state of, okay, what next? And that is something Mirage does not have. Mirage is amazing, however I find her playstyle incredibly boring, as I did with Chroma, since they just kind of set up their abilities, then wait for them to run out, and run it again. That does not mean by any means she's bad, because goddamn, if you feel like putting out numbers, she is a go-to. But she is fairly boring in my opinion. With that said, onto the abilities. Mirage's passive is fairly simple, so I'm going to go over it briefly, then just move on. Sliding lasts 75% longer, and any acrobatics that happen are 25% faster. It's neat, but it's not really that noticeable in my opinion. Mirage's 1 summons 4 clones around her that mirror Mirage's attacks and mirror her too, but the key thing here is her attacks. Let's take a weapon that I like to tag onto her, the Kuva Brahma. I run a build with multi-shot for some extra shenanigans, but let's do some simple math and say I only have a 2.0 multi-shot, meaning normally I fire 2 rockets per shot. However, with doppelgangers, I send out 4 additional shots per time I'm firing, meaning 8 extra rockets. 10 rockets per fire is insane, and that's just with 2.0 multi-shot. Imagine having a shotgun or the Kuva Brock, where 18 pellets times 5 means you're sending more pellets into the Grenier than you could even imagine, and it is absolutely beautiful. Mirage's 2, Sleight of Hand, booby traps nearby objects and makes it so that they do one of 2 things. If the object is in the light, it will explode with blast damage, and if it's in the shadow, it will blind enemies for a duration. If Mirage has her clones active, they will also place smaller booby traps, meaning for a meme build you could run a lot of range and power strength and booby trap a whole ass tile set and laugh as you rake in kills. I don't personally do it, I focus on her 1 and her 3, but meme builds are fun sometimes. Eclipse is her 3, and it to me is amazing and horrible at the same time. Mirage is about as strong as tissue paper when it comes to getting hit and gets shredded at the same rate, so some DR is really nice, in which her Eclipse gives. However, it's situational DR. You can't control it. Let me explain. If Mirage is in shadow, she gains DR up to a maximum of 90%, and if she is in light, she gains bonus damage. The bonus damage makes her already big numbers ginormous, however the DR is a necessity if enemy levels reach a certain point, and since you can't control it, it's really only okay for survivability. However, the ability's bonus damage is insane, so there are some positives to that negative. Mirage's 4 fires a prism, shooting 20 lasers out in random directions and dealing damage to enemies when the lasers hit. If upon recast, enemies are nearby, they are damaged and blinded for a duration. This is a really decent form of CC for her, but the damage is a bit lackluster. I don't find myself using this ability that often, if at all. It's really only good in tight corridors and hallways. For Mirage's augments, she has 3, all of which are good, but I don't own them as they are in a syndicate that I'm not a part of. Hall of Malevolence makes it so that when you kill an enemy, it makes your clones deal 5% more damage per enemy killed, which is nice, and honestly for Steel Path it may be a requirement since enemy levels are getting really high, but I don't know because I don't use Mirage in my Steel Path. As far as everyday play goes, the buff isn't really needed as baseline they already deal bonus damage, so it's only okay on that end. Explosive Legerdemain, I don't know how that's said, turns ammo and orb pickups into proximity mines, dealing 500 damage and 100% status chance, which is cool for the aforementioned meme build, but I'd give it a pass because I tend to focus on clones and Eclipse as stated. And finally, Total Eclipse makes it so that if Eclipse is active and allies are near you, they will benefit from Mirage's Eclipse, which is amazing. It gives her great support capabilities and also gives a reason for people to want her in a squad outside of her insane damage. As for her build, I put a heavy focus in damage and duration, making range a dump stat, and with high enough duration, efficiency can join it in the dump stat category. However, I will say if you're running Total Eclipse, the augment that I mentioned, I would recommend putting a slightly higher focus on range, as I can't be sure because I don't own it, but I would assume that its buffing range would scale with your range. Mirage brings a lot to the table, being the queen to the Chroma King weapon slingers in this game. They're super impactful and capable of putting out insane DPS and nuking even steel path enemies. The issue that I take with weapon slingers is just how boring they can be sometimes, but that's a personal feel and nothing to do with the frame. I know Mirage mains personally that would hang me by my balls for ever talking shit about their DPS waifu, and I get it. I love Harrow, who is technically a weapon slinger, but that's because he is always active, always doing something for the team, and always casting abilities. As far as recommendations for Mirage, she's earned off of a quest, which is actually kind of fun, so I'm gonna even recommend her to new players. However, experienced players, I'd feed her to the wall fleshlight because it gives you Eclipse, which is great to put on other frames, and then you can farm out a prime for yourself. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and hopefully I will see you all in the next one.